That doesn't mean that we want to fly a rocket once per day, but it means that we could if we needed to. Now at the top of this rocket is the nose cone structure at the very top. This is called the payload fairing, inside which is Bongobondhu Satellite 1, the first Bangladeshi geostationary communication satellite for the country of Bangladesh. The satellite was built by Thales Alenia Espace of France and covers a wide variety of broadcast and telecommunication applications, including satellite television, internet access, and emergency communication services, and of course much more. The satellite will be operated by the Bangladesh Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, or BTRC, and is expected to last approximately 15 years on orbit. Bongobondhu Satellite 1 will stay protected inside that fairing all the way up until about 3.5 minutes into flight. The fairing protects the satellite on ascent, but once we escape Earth's atmosphere, it's no longer needed and we pop it off. We are not attempting to recover this fairing on today's mission, but it's something that we'll look forward to do in future missions. So with just about 5 minutes or 6 minutes left in the countdown, let's check in with Michael on how the rocket is doing.
We're now just inside of T-minus 6 minutes, and Stage 1 and Stage 2 are both almost fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. At this point, both stages are just about 100% of fuel. Stage 1 is at 99% liquid oxygen and at 90% for Stage 2. We'll continue topping off both stages until about T-minus 2 minutes to keep the propellants as cold and therefore as dense as possible in order to fit as much propellant onto the vehicle as we can. Around the T-minus 7 minute mark, we began our engine chill procedure. The propellants are much colder than the engines, and so it's important to get the engines to the correct temperature beforehand by slowly flowing propellant through them. Liquid oxygen in particular is so much colder that it would turn into a gas upon first contact, which would be a pretty hard start for the engine. The strong back cradle is opening and will slightly retract away from the rocket. The strong back is the structure that's standing immediately next to Falcon 9 on your screen, not the larger gray structure. It will recline more fully as Falcon 9 is and you heard the strong back lower has begun. At T-minus 3 minutes, we'll be performing an engine wiggle. That's checking the thrust vector control system to make sure that the Merlin engines will be able to properly steer Falcon 9 during ascent. And at T-minus 60 seconds, you'll hear that Falcon 9 is in startup, which means that the rocket's internal flight computers have taken over the countdown. You can see the cradle is opening and it's just finished opening on your screen there. The little arm is just beneath the fairing. One more interesting change for this mission relates to the Merlin engines themselves. In Block 4, the engines were used with a constant chamber pressure. Because engine thrust depends on both the chamber pressure and external atmospheric pressure, the Block 4 engine's thrust would slowly increase by up to 10 or 15,000 pounds per engine during ascent. For Block 5, we'll be maintaining a constant thrust of 190,000 pounds until cutoff, which means we'll actually be slowly decreasing the engine's chamber pressures over time to compensate for decreasing atmospheric pressure.
Stage 1 launch, that was good.
Otherwise, the drone ship is on standby in the Atlantic Ocean. The payload is healthy and go for launch. The range is also go for launch. And at this point, we're inside of T-minus 3 minutes and getting pretty close to T0.
Strongback lower is ended. Strongback's at 88.2 degrees.
So let's listen in to the last couple minutes of terminal count.
Stage 2 LUX loads closed out. And Falcon 9's on internal power. Gas closeouts.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Falcon 9 is in start. LD go for launch.
Nice, 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is at full pressures.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition, liftoff.
Falcon 9 lift off in a beautifully clear shot there at 4:14 p.m. Eastern. At T plus 10 seconds, the thrust vector control system
Vehicle is supersonic.
tilted Falcon to begin a pitch kick maneuver to get it going sideways. You just heard that we're going supersonic and we're about to go through max Q when the rocket's pushing hardest against the atmosphere.
Vehicle is experiencing maximum dynamic pressure.
Successfully achieved that major milestone of every rocket launch. We're actually decreasing the thrust in our engines a little bit around the time of max Q to minimize some of those forces. Coming up about 50 seconds from now,
Back engine chill.
there will be 3 events in quick succession. The main engines will cut off, the 2 stages will separate, and the second stage will start its Merlin vacuum engine, which you heard is just beginning its own chill procedure. Cutoff happening just a few seconds from now.
BD'Q.
Station.
See some of the flicker from Merlin vacuum engine plume as it next major event is the fairing deploy coming up just a few seconds from now. That's the second stage that will be deploying its fairing.
Vehicle is on nominal frequency.
And there you see the fairings falling way behind. They're light, they're made of carbon fiber and aluminum honeycomb, but they still represent excess mass, so we no longer need them once we get out of the atmosphere.
Acquisition will take over meter.
For those of you just joining us, we had three events in rapid succession. We had a main engine cutoff from that first stage, we had a stage separation event, and then we had a second stage light, followed quickly then by a fairing separation. Everything's going great right now. Falcon 9 is looking pretty good. Right now, let's go over what we can see on your screen. On the left-hand side, that's a camera mounted on the top of the first stage of the rocket, looking down towards the 9 Merlin engines at the bottom. In that view, you can see those titanium grid fins. They slowly deployed just after stage separation, and those grid fins will allow the Falcon 9 first stage to guide itself back down towards the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. You can see brief flashes of those cold gas thrusters as they provide additional control authority for that first stage. On the right-hand side of your screen is a camera mounted at the very bottom of the second stage, looking down towards the Merlin vacuum nozzle. Of course, at the very other end of that stage is the Bongobondhu Satellite 1. Right now, that Merlin vacuum engine is glowing red hot with those exhaust gases as it propels Bongobondhu Satellite 1 into its final geostationary transfer orbit. Our Falcon 9 first stage today is going to perform 2 burn maneuvers in order to get back down towards the drone ship. The first burn is going to be an entry burn coming up in about 30 seconds. You'll be able to see that entry burn start on the left-hand side of your screen. As a reminder, those bursts of clouds coming out of the Falcon 9 first stage on the left are those cold gas thrusters that, in addition to the titanium grid fins, allow it to provide or to control itself as it comes back down through the atmosphere. There's the startup of the entry burn. At this point, the Falcon 9 first stage is actually only about 10% of the mass that it was on the pad, so it's actually pretty empty of fuel and liquid oxygen right now. So this entry burn is only going to last a few more seconds before cutting off. And there it is. As that first stage gets closer and closer to the surface of the Earth, we should be able to see features such as clouds, waves, and eventually the outline of our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. It looks like there may be some condensation forming on the inside of the camera, but we should get some good video. On the right-hand side of your screen, again, that second stage is still continuously propelling Bongobondhu Satellite 1 into orbit. Looks like we may have lost video from the cameras on that first stage momentarily. We'll see if we can get them back. One thing that is unique about this mission is that the second stage engine cutoff is going to happen just before the landing, coming up in about 20 seconds or so. You can see in your mission status bar at the very bottom, the second stage engine cutoff and landing are right on top of each other, so be prepared for those 2 events to happen in quick succession. So so it looks like we don't have a great video signal with that first stage right now, but we do have confirmation that the landing burn has started. Those landing legs should be deploying very soon. There it is. And after a brief interruption in the video signal, we are looking at the 25th recovered first stage of a Falcon 9 vehicle. What a great sight. That is a camera on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. The crowd's going nuts here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne. While all that was happening, we did have a successful second stage engine cutoff of that second stage carrying Bongobondhu Satellite 1. While we're all very excited here at SpaceX to recover our 25th booster, the primary mission is still to bring Bongobondhu Satellite 1 into geostationary transfer orbit. Right now, everything's looking good from that second stage. It's going to coast for about 17 minutes or so. We're not going to be with you for all of that. We're actually going to just look at a simulation of where that second stage is. However, we will come back in approximately 9 or 10 minutes to guide through the rest of the satellite deployment.
Of today's launch. We had a successful launch at 4:14 p.m. Eastern Time. Great stage separation. We caught the first stage on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, and the second stage had an excellent burn, maintained great chamber pressure through the whole time, and during the coast period it's been keeping its propellants well settled in their tanks, which is important for getting the second stage its second burn. That's coming up just a few seconds from happening right now. This burn is going to last for a total of about 1 minute, and it's going to raise the orbit from being just a couple hundred kilometers above the surface of the Earth into a geostationary transfer orbit where the maximum altitude is 36,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. So in these few minutes before separation at this point, only a couple more things are going to be happening. We're bleeding our propellant lines down to bring down the pressure in the plumbing. After the burn is complete, that is, which should be happening in about 15 or 20 seconds from now. Saw it. The second stage completed its second burn. Let's take a few moments to make sure that we've entered the expected orbit.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, we are only about 30 seconds away from the deployment of Bongobondhu Satellite 1. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see a camera view of the satellite itself in the very bottom. It's currently attached to the top of that second stage by way of a payload adapter fitting. In about 10 seconds, we should be able to see that payload adapter fitting release, and Bongobondhu Satellite 1 will be on its way. Let's watch that.
Successfully deployed Bongobondhu Satellite 1. It's on its way to geostationary orbit. So that brings today's mission to a close. So quick recap of the mission. We launched at 4:14 p.m. Eastern. We successfully separated the two stages, caught the first stage, had two burns of the second stage with a coast period in between, and as you just saw, Bongobondhu Satellite 1 is floating away.
As you can tell, the crowd here at SpaceX is extremely excited. It's a big day for both us and for their nation of Bangladesh. At this point, we're going to bring the coverage of the webcast to a close. SpaceX would like to thank our customer, Thales Alenia Space, and their customer, the Bangladesh Telecommunication Regulatory Commission. We'd also like to thank the U.S. Air Force, the Range, and the Federal Aviation Administration for supporting the launch. And of course, thank you, the viewer, for tuning in today.
If you'd like to join us, check us out at spacex.com/careers to contribute to some of the work that we're doing. Otherwise, look for updates on our next mission on our social platforms or our website. Thank you again.
আপডেট ভিডিও পেতে টেকনোটসল চ্যানেলকে সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন এবং বেল বাটনটি ক্লিক করুন।